Hi, my name is April. Let's talk about books. This is my BookTubeAthon wrap-up for 2017. Even though I had designated 7 different books, one for each of the challenges, I did not read 7 books last week. Instead, I only read 3. The first book that I completed was Lakota Woman by Mary Crow Dog. This was for the challenge of reading a book about a character who's very different from you, but you can see that it would also qualify for somebody or a person on the cover. This book is a memoir by Mary Crow Dog of her time growing up on a reservation in South Dakota, as well as the time that she spent as part of the American Indian movement in the 70s, particularly at the siege at Wounded Knee. I learned a lot reading this book. In America, almost everybody will say that they've got some Indian blood, so you would think that there wouldn't be so much discrimination against our native people. However, that's not at all what Mary Crow Dog's experience was. Around the reservation in particular, the people were very racist towards the Native Americans. Mary Crow Dog herself was sent away to a boarding school, as were many of the people of her tribe, which apparently was typical of the time period. And the nuns at that school spent a lot of time trying to beat the red out of the kids. That was not something that I thought nuns would do, but I don't like my experience of nuns is the sound of music, and they seem much nicer, but apparently that's not really what happened, at least at these boarding schools. I learned that women would oftentimes, after giving birth, be forcibly sterilized, or they would be sterilized without their knowledge or permission. When I talked to my mom about this, she is a Native American who spent some time on a reservation. She was not surprised at all. She knew that these things happened, and she was just kind of blasé about it. I, however, was horrified because I didn't know those things happened at all. Mary Crow Dog talks about the siege at Wounded Knee. She actually gave birth while under siege. The FBI at that time had so many weapons, it seems like, at least from my reading, it seemed like they were prepared to go into battle against about 200 Native Americans who had taken over like this trading post in this small city. So it seemed to me that the reaction by the government was overblown, and I think that that is a product of the racism. She does say in the book that the people who gained the most from kind of tricking Native Americans or just stealing from Native Americans seem to be the ones who are the most vocally racist, or the ones who take the most action. And I at least from what I read in this book, I do find that to be true. So this really opened my eyes to a whole different way of living, and the way that people think about others, just a type of discrimination that I just wasn't familiar with. The second book that I completed was Mrs. Harris Goes to Parliament. This is for the challenge of reading a book in one day, and I did complete that, and you can see that it also has a person on the cover. This is actually the 3rd in a series by Paul Gallico, following Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris and Mrs. Harris Goes to New York. In this book, Mrs. Harris is campaigning for Parliament. One of her clients, she's a charwoman, so one of the people whose houses she cleans is kind of like a campaign manager, or just like the money behind a campaign, and he suggests that she run for Parliament. However, unbeknownst to her, his suggestion comes because he wants to split the vote between the 2 main candidates, so that his guy can actually win that election. I liked this book. I don't really understand British politics. They do seem to be quite different from American. I mean, other than the fact that they do vote, the way that their votes are counted and how people take office seems to be a little bit different. But Mrs. Harris is very naive going into this. The thing that I really took away from this is that she has tremendous friends, people who will stand up for her and who will help her without any expectation of reprisal. They just did it because they love her and they didn't want her to be hurt. The only thing that I didn't really like about this book is that I felt like through various events, Mrs. Aris didn't really act as within character. She didn't act the way that I expected her to based on the first 2 books. So that was a little disappointing, but it was still a great read. It was so sweet and delightful, and I did enjoy it, and I did fly through it in one day. The third book that I read was by Sherman Alexie. It's The Lone Ranger and Tonto, Fist Fight in Heaven. It's a collection of short stories. And this one, the short stories are actually, many of them kind of fall into the category of magical realism. They are loosely connected because you'll see characters pop up at various times throughout the book. Somebody who's mentioned in one story will show up as the main character in another. There are shifts in points of view, which can be a little bit confusing. I overall enjoyed this book. It was different than Lakota Woman, in that it wasn't so dreary, I guess. However, there really is a tone that suggests that people who live on the reservation, the Spokane reservation in this case, really don't have a lot of high expectations in terms of like kind of moving off the reservation. They just do seem to accept, I'm gonna say, their fate. There's not really anything where people they don't really have like dreams, or they're not like moving towards their dreams, because they keep seeing others get beaten down so often that it seems like making any kind of effort is just going to be fruitless. And so that's a little bit sad, but overall I didn't come away from that book feeling just depressed. I did kind of feel hope at the end of it, and I really enjoyed reading the book. I did start the David Sedaris book, the audiobook. That was going to be the one for reading outside, but instead I just listened to it inside. The book is called Theft by Finding. It's by David Sedaris. It's his diaries from the 1970s up to 2002. And it's a great book. I'm almost done with it, but I didn't finish it in time to complete any of these challenges. So those are the books that I completed for the BookTubeAthon 2017. If you have any questions or comments about any of those, please let me know in the comments below, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbyes are awkward, so end of video.